The squirrel in your yard knows things about your property that you have never been told. Not small things, not trivial things, things that would genuinely surprise you if you could see them the way she sees them. She knows which part of your yard floods first after heavy rain. She knows where the coldest air settles on winter mornings and which corner stays warmest longest into the evening. She knows which section of your fence is weakest, which branch of your oak will come down in the next bad storm, which part of your garden soil is richest, and which part has been slowly dying for years. She knows the underground geography of your property, where the roots run deep and where they do not, where the soil changes composition 6 inches beneath the surface, where water pools underground long after the surface has dried. She has been studying your yard for longer than you have lived in it. And the remarkable thing, the thing that should stop you for a moment, is that most of what she knows you do not. You own this property, you mow it, plant it, water it, and tend it. And the squirrel who lives in your oak tree understands it more completely than you ever have. Tonight we're going to change that. Welcome back to Hidden Backyard Wildlife, the channel where we sit with the small wild lives that share our yards and try to understand what they understand about the world. If you are new here, make sure you subscribe before this video is over, because what you are about to learn is going to permanently change the way you walk through your own yard, because you will finally be seeing some of what she has always seen. Today we are walking through 8 things the squirrel in your yard knows about your property that you do not. What those things reveal about how her mind works, and why the small creature you have been watching from your kitchen window has a more complete understanding of the land you live on than you have ever given her credit for. Stay with me from beginning to end, because number 6 is the one that researchers did not believe until they measured it themselves. And the final one, number 8, is the one I think will stay with you the longest, especially the next time you walk through your yard and realize you are walking through someone else's archive. You know your yard from the surface, she knows it from beneath. The squirrel in your yard has spent years pressing her nose to the ground, reading the soil composition across every inch of your property. She knows where the earth is dense and where it is loose. She knows where roots crowd the underground space and where the soil opens into soft pockets perfect for caching. She knows where moisture collects beneath the surface days after rain and where the ground drains fast and where it does not drain at all. Researchers studying squirrel caching behavior have found that gray squirrels demonstrate remarkable selectivity in burial site choice, consistently preferring soil with specific drainage, density, and root structure characteristics that preserve cached food most effectively. This selectivity requires a detailed sensory map of subsurface conditions across an entire territory. The squirrel in your yard has mapped your soil from below. She knows which corners of your garden will hold a cache through a wet winter and which will flood and destroy it. She knows where the best soil is, not by the standards of a gardener but by the standards of a creature who depends on the underground for her survival. If you have ever wondered why your squirrel seems to prefer specific corners of the garden for her digging, always the same spots, always ignoring certain areas entirely, you are watching this underground knowledge expressed as behavior. She is not digging randomly. She is working from a map of your property that goes deeper than anything you have ever drawn of it. You know your yard has a gate, maybe 2, a driveway entrance, a side passage, the gap under the back fence where the dog sometimes escapes. She knows all of those, and 17 more that you have never noticed. The squirrel in your yard has mapped every entry and exit point of your property with the thoroughness of someone whose life depends on knowing every possible escape route, because her life does. The gap between the 3rd and 4th fence board on the north side, the place where the hedge thins enough to squeeze through, the branch that extends over the wall from the neighbor's tree, the section of fence whose post has rotted enough that a slight pressure will shift it. Researchers studying territorial mapping in urban squirrels have documented that squirrels maintain detailed mental maps of access routes through their territory, routes that allow them to move without crossing open ground, without exposing themselves to aerial predators, without entering unfamiliar spaces. These maps are updated continuously as the landscape changes. She knows how to get into your yard from 12 different directions without ever crossing open ground. She knows the route that lets her enter from the north without being visible from the street. She knows the exit that takes her to the neighbor's oak in 4 seconds if something goes wrong in your yard. You have one gate. She has an entire network of passages through, under, over, and around the boundaries of your property, and she has tested every one of them. Look up at the sky above your yard. What do you see? She sees something completely different. The squirrel in your yard has mapped the aerial threat landscape above your property with a precision that would impress a military strategist. She knows which direction hawks approach from most frequently. She knows the specific flight path the red-tailed hawk uses when it hunts your neighborhood, the angle of approach, the altitude, the time of day it tends to appear. She knows which parts of your yard are visible from the telephone wire where a bird of prey likes to sit, and which parts are screened by the oak canopy. Researchers studying anti-predator behavior in urban squirrels have found that squirrels demonstrate consistent avoidance of specific ground areas that correspond precisely to the sightlines of known perch sites used by raptors in the area, suggesting they maintain a detailed spatial model of aerial predator coverage over their territory. She has divided your yard into zones, covered zones where the oak branches screen her from above, and exposed zones where she moves quickly and reluctantly. She knows that the section of lawn nearest the back fence is the most dangerous open ground in your property. She knows that the northwest corner near the compost bin is the safest foraging ground because it is screened on 3 sides. You look at your yard and see a garden. She looks at your yard and sees a 3-dimensional threat map updated daily that she navigates with her life every single morning. The difference between the two views is the difference between someone who owns a property and someone who survives on it. This one will change the way you look at your trees. The squirrel in your yard knows which branches in your oak are structurally compromised. She knows this not because she has an engineering degree, but because she has spent years running across every branch in that tree, feeling the flex, the give, the subtle wrongness of a branch that is rotting from the inside. She has learned to read the tree through her feet. Researchers studying squirrel locomotion in tree canopies have documented that squirrels adjust their movement patterns in response to subtle structural cues in branches, avoiding specific limbs that show no visible sign of weakness to human observers, but that the squirrel's kinesthetic sense has registered as compromised. In several documented cases, branches the squirrels had begun avoiding came down in subsequent storms. She has already stopped using certain branches in your oak, not because anything looks wrong with them, because they feel wrong under her feet in a way that her body understands before her mind has named it. If you watch carefully, if you notice which branches she uses readily and which ones she avoids or crosses quickly, she is showing you something about your tree that no visual inspection from the ground could reveal. She is the structural survey your arborist never gave you, and she has been conducting it continuously with every pass through the canopy for as long as she has lived in that tree. She knows what is going to fall before it falls. She moves her life around it before you have any idea anything is wrong. Your yard is not one temperature, it is not one wind speed or one level of humidity. It is a collection of distinct microclimates, small pockets of warmth and cold, shelter and exposure, damp and dry, that shift with the time of day and the season of the year. You have probably never mapped them, she has. The squirrel in your yard knows that the southeast corner near the brick wall holds warmth 2 hours longer than the rest of the yard in autumn mornings. She knows that the north side of the fence creates a wind shadow that makes winter foraging bearable on days when the open lawn is brutal. She knows that the compost bin generates enough ambient warmth to matter in February. She knows that the patio stones radiate heat in the late afternoon that makes the garden edge beside them the warmest foraging strip in the yard on October evenings. Researchers studying thermoregulatory behavior in small mammals have found that urban squirrels demonstrate consistent use of specific microclimate features within their territory, selecting foraging and resting locations that correspond precisely to the warmest, most sheltered spots available at any given time of day and season. She has been managing her own thermostat using the geography of your yard. Every spot she chooses to be in is a choice based on a microclimate map that she has been refining for years. The warm brick wall in November, the shaded north corner in July, the wind-broken fence line in February. She uses your yard like a precision instrument for staying alive. And she knows things about the thermal geography of your property that you have never bothered to learn about the land you pay taxes on. This is the one researchers did not believe until they measured it themselves. Your yard has a history that predates your ownership of it. Squirrels have been living in your oak tree or in the trees that preceded it for generations, and the squirrel currently in your yard is not starting from scratch with that history, she has inherited it. Studies examining territorial inheritance in urban squirrel populations have found evidence that core territories are passed between generations of squirrels. with juveniles learning the boundaries, resources, and social arrangements of a territory from the adult whose range they inherit. The knowledge encoded in a squirrel territory is not just spatial, it is historical. It contains information about relationships, conflicts, boundaries, and arrangements that predate the current animal. The squirrel in your yard knows which neighboring territory belongs to which other squirrel and what the history of that boundary is. She knows which areas of the nearby park are controlled by which animals. She knows the social agreements where she is tolerated, where she is not, which routes are shared and which are exclusive. She also knows something about your yard's history that you do not. She knows which previous squirrels have lived in your oak. She knows where past animals cached food that was never retrieved, locations in your garden where acorns have been slowly becoming trees for years, forgotten by the squirrel who buried them and unknown to you. She is the living archive of your property's wildlife history, and that archive goes back further than the day you moved in. You know your yard in the daytime. In the light, with your eyes doing most of the work, the yard is familiar and readable. She knows it in every condition your eyes cannot handle. The squirrel in your yard has navigated your property in pre-dawn darkness, in heavy rain, in fog, in the flat gray light of overcast afternoons when everything looks the same. She has moved through your yard in conditions that would make you stumble, and she has done it without hesitation because she is not navigating primarily by sight. She is navigating by smell, by sound, by the felt memory of the terrain under her feet, by the air pressure changes that tell her where the fence is before she can see it. Researchers studying spatial navigation in small mammals have found that squirrels maintain functional navigational accuracy across their territory in conditions of dramatically reduced visibility, using olfactory landmarks, acoustic cues, and tactile memory to navigate terrain they have learned primarily through repeated physical experience. She knows the exact height of every fence board she has crossed in the dark. She knows the feel of every tree root she has run across in the rain. She knows the sound the wind makes when it comes over your back fence at a particular angle that tells her something about where she is in the yard without looking. Your yard in the dark is a mystery to you. To her, it is as readable as it is in full morning light. She has been navigating it by senses you do not have, in conditions you cannot manage for longer than you have known it in any condition at all. I have saved this one for last, because it is the one I think will stay with you the longest. The squirrel in your yard does not think about ownership. She does not know the concept of a deed or a mortgage or a property line in the legal sense. But she understands territory in a way that goes deeper than any document. She understands it through her body. Through her years of accumulated knowledge of this specific piece of ground, through the history she carries of every animal who has lived here before her. And embedded in that understanding is something quietly humbling. Researchers studying long-term territorial use in urban wildlife have documented that certain core territories, particularly those centered on mature trees in stable residential areas, show continuous squirrel occupation across decades, with territories passing from one generation to the next while the human ownership of the surrounding property changes multiple times. Your yard will have squirrels in it after you are gone. The oak tree she lives in was here before you arrived and will be here after you leave. The territory she occupies has been squirrel territory for longer than it has been your address. She is not a visitor to your property. In the deepest sense, the sense that is measured in generations of continuous occupation and accumulated knowledge, she is the longer-term resident. She knows this yard in ways that will outlast your knowledge of it. The underground map she carries, the predator patterns she has memorized, the microclimate geography she has refined across years of daily use. All of this will be passed to the next squirrel who inherits this territory long after the name on the mailbox has changed. You own the property, she knows it, and she knew it in the ways that matter most to a living creature trying to survive on a specific piece of ground long before you arrived, and she will know it long after you are gone. That is not a story about squirrels knowing your yard. That is a story about what it means to truly know a place, about the difference between owning land and living on it, about the quiet knowledge that accumulates in a body that has moved through the same ground in every season, in every weather, in every light for longer than any document records. The squirrel in your yard looks at you from the oak tree sometimes, and in the small ways available to her, she understands something about your relationship to this piece of ground that you may never have let yourself think about. She was here first, she will be here last. And everything in between, every morning you have spent in this yard, every season you have watched from this window, she has been watching too, knowing more, saying nothing, keeping the knowledge of this place in her body the way the earth itself keeps it. In her bones, in her feet, in her nose and her memory and her mapped understanding of every inch of the ground you walk on, she has always known this yard better than you have. And now, for the first time, you know that she knows. Before I go, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer in the comments below. Has your squirrel ever done something in your yard that suggested she knew something about it that you did not, avoided a branch that later fell, found a spot you had never thought to look at, navigated your property in conditions that should have been impossible? Tell me about it. What happened? What did it look like? The stories this hidden backyard wildlife community shares are some of the most extraordinary I read every week, and every single one of them matters. If anything in this video changed the way you will walk through your yard tomorrow morning, if it changed the way you look at the creature who has been there longer than you have, share it with someone who would understand. Sometimes the right perspective at the right moment changes what we notice for the rest of our lives. Thank you for being here at Hidden Backyard Wildlife. Tomorrow morning when you step outside, look at the squirrel in your oak tree. She already knows everything you are only beginning to understand. She has always known, she always will. I will see you in the next one.